Not everyone who is against you will argue with you. Some people will smile first. They will support you in words and weaken you in silence. They won't stop your success. They'll simply wait for you to stop yourself. Human nature becomes dangerous when opposition stops looking like opposition. And once you see these signs, you will never look at people the same way again. 1. They celebrate your success without emotion. One of the strangest truths about human nature is this: people rarely reveal opposition through direct conflict. Most of the time, they reveal it through absence. Absence of excitement, absence of warmth, absence of energy, and one of the first places this appears is when something good happens to you. Imagine this. You finally achieve something you worked for quietly. Maybe you earn more money, build something meaningful, improve yourself, gain recognition, or reach a goal nobody believed you could reach. You tell someone close to you. You expect celebration, not because you need praise, but because success naturally creates emotion in people who want good things for you, but their reaction feels strange. They smile. They say the correct words. That's amazing. Happy for you. You deserve it. Nothing sounds wrong. And yet, something feels missing. There is no curiosity, no excitement, no questions, no desire to know how you did it. The conversation moves away from your success almost immediately. You leave thinking, maybe I'm overthinking, maybe they're just tired, maybe I expected too much. But human behavior leaves patterns. People invest attention into what they emotionally support. Think about how people react when someone they genuinely care about succeeds. They become interested. They ask questions. They imagine the future. Their energy expands because success feels shared, but hidden resistance behaves differently. Someone secretly against you often understands something dangerous. Your growth changes the balance. As long as you remain familiar, comfortable, predictable, everything stays stable. But the moment you improve, earn respect, become disciplined, attract opportunities, or gain confidence, you become unpredictable. And people who are comfortable with the old version of you can quietly resist the new one, not because they hate you, sometimes because your growth forces comparison, your discipline exposes their excuses, your ambition reminds them of abandoned goals, your progress becomes evidence that change was possible all along, and instead of rising with you, they emotionally disconnect from your victory. This is why some people become strangely calm when your life improves, not angry, not openly jealous, just emotionally unavailable. Watch carefully. Do they only become energetic when discussing problems? Do they engage more with your failures than your wins? Do they become supportive only after things stop going well? These moments reveal more than compliments ever will, because words are cheap. Energy is expensive. Anyone can say they support you. Very few people can remain emotionally generous when you begin becoming someone larger than the version they were comfortable with. This does not mean every quiet person is secretly against you. Some people struggle to express emotion. Some people are distracted. One moment means nothing, but repeated patterns tell stories. The point is not to become suspicious of everyone. The point is to observe without illusion. Pay attention to who becomes brighter when you rise and who becomes quieter. That difference reveals more than most people realize. 2, they disappear when you need support. There is a moment in every relationship that reveals more truth than years of conversation. It is not when everything is easy. It is not during celebrations. It is the moment pressure appears. Because difficulty has a strange effect on people. It removes performance. It removes image. It removes words. And suddenly people reveal what role they were truly playing in your life. One of the darkest signs someone may secretly be against you is not open criticism. It is disappearance. At first, this behavior is difficult to notice because it rarely looks dramatic. Nothing obvious happens. No argument. No betrayal. No direct rejection. Instead, the person slowly becomes unavailable the moment support actually matters. When life is normal, they are present. When conversations are entertaining, they respond. When there is attention, excitement, or status involved, they appear naturally. But the moment you enter uncertainty, their energy disappears. You ask for advice, they become busy. You need encouragement, they become distant. You face a difficult period, suddenly they have less time than ever before. And what makes this confusing is that they never completely leave. They stay close enough to preserve the image of loyalty, but never close enough to carry weight. This is where many people misunderstand human nature. Support is not measured by words. It is measured by presence. Anyone can say, "I'm here for you." Very few people rearrange comfort to prove it. Watch carefully. Who checks on you without being asked? Who remembers difficult moments? Who shows up when there is nothing to gain? Because hidden opposition often avoids direct conflict. Direct conflict creates consequences. Distance creates confusion, and confusion protects reputation. Some people understand this instinctively. They know disappearing creates no evidence. You cannot accuse someone of not caring. You cannot prove emotional absence, so they remain technically present while becoming practically unavailable. But there is something even deeper happening. Sometimes people disappear because your struggle interrupts the role they assign to you. As long as you are successful, entertaining, useful, confident, or stable, they enjoy your presence. But once you need something, the relationship changes, and suddenly they lose interest. Not because they wanted your success, because they wanted your function. There is a difficult truth many people discover too late. Attention is common. Support is rare. People often gather around momentum, but pressure reveals commitment. Notice who becomes uncomfortable when life stops looking impressive. Notice who changes when your value is no longer visible. Notice who waits for you to recover before returning. Because some people do not disappear because they cannot help. They disappear because your difficult season offers them nothing. And sometimes the most dangerous people are not the ones who attack you. They are the ones who quietly step aside and watch to see whether you survive. Do not become bitter. Do not expect everyone to save you. Just observe. People reveal their place in your life by what they do when your life becomes inconvenient. When support becomes expensive, truth becomes cheap, and that is where hidden intentions begin to appear. 3, they remember your weaknesses more than your strengths. Human beings reveal themselves through what they pay attention to. This sounds simple, but if you observe carefully, attention is one of the purest forms of intention because people remember what matters to them. And one of the darker signs someone may secretly be against you is this: they remember your failures with unusual precision, but forget your growth with incredible speed. At first, this behavior appears harmless. You make a mistake. Months later, they mention it. You fail once. Years later, they still connect you to that moment. You act emotionally one time. Suddenly, it becomes part of your identity. Meanwhile, the effort you made to improve, the discipline you built, the progress everyone else noticed, somehow never becomes part of the conversation. You begin to feel something strange around them. No matter how much you change, they continue speaking to an older version of you. You become more confident. They still treat you as insecure. You become more disciplined. They still talk as if you lack direction. You become stronger. They still remind you who you used to be. This is where human nature becomes uncomfortable. People do not always resist your future. Sometimes they become attached to your past because your old identity made them comfortable. Every relationship creates invisible roles. One person becomes the successful one. One becomes the funny one. One becomes the uncertain one. One becomes the one who always needs help. And once these roles settle, change creates tension because if you evolve, everyone around you must update their understanding of who you are. Some people do this naturally. Others quietly resist. So instead of recognizing your growth, they preserve your old image, and the easiest way to preserve someone's old image is to keep repeating their old mistakes. Watch for the pattern. You tell a story about something you achieved. They respond with a story about a time you failed. You share a new goal. They remind you of the last one that didn't work. You show confidence. They bring up old embarrassment. Notice what is happening. This is not always criticism. Sometimes it appears disguised as memory, as a joke, as concern, as realism. But over time, the message becomes clear. Do not become larger than the version of you I already understand. There is another reason this happens. Weakness gives people certainty. Your strengths create movement. Your strengths suggest possibility, but your weaknesses make you predictable, and predictable people feel safe. This is why hidden opposition rarely studies your potential. It studies your your limits. Because if someone only sees your limitations, they never have to adjust their place in the world. Be careful though. This does not mean every person who remembers your mistakes is against you. Real friends sometimes remind you of weaknesses to protect you, but there is a difference. People who care about you point to your weakness and then remind you of your capability. People who quietly resist you point to your weakness and act as if that is all you are. One wants your growth. The other wants your identity frozen. So ask yourself something difficult. When people describe me, do they talk about who I was or who I am becoming? Because sometimes hidden opposition does not attack your future. It simply refuses to recognize it. And that can keep people trapped longer than open criticism ever could. 4. They quietly influence how others see you. There is a form of opposition that almost nobody notices at first because it does not arrive as criticism. It arrives as interpretation, and that makes it far more difficult to detect. One of the darkest signs someone may secretly be against you is that they do not attack you directly. They slowly shape how other people experience you. This rarely looks dramatic. In fact, if you are waiting for obvious betrayal, you will probably miss it. There are no public arguments, no open insults, no direct attempts to destroy your reputation. People who operate this way understand something powerful. Direct attacks create resistance. Subtle influence creates agreement. So instead of saying, "I don't trust them," they say, "I could be wrong, but something feels different lately." Instead of saying, "They're selfish," they say, "I just hope success doesn't change them." Instead of criticizing your ambition, they ask questions. Do you think they're doing too much? Do you think they've changed? Maybe they're under pressure. Nothing sounds openly hostile. Everything sounds reasonable, concerned, thoughtful, which is exactly why it works. Because human beings rarely adopt opinions through force. We adopt them through repetition. Tiny suggestions repeated enough times begin to feel like observations. And over time, people stop questioning where the idea came from. They simply begin feeling it. That is what makes this behavior dangerous. It leaves no fingerprints. You begin noticing strange changes. People become colder. Conversations feel different. Energy shifts. Someone acts distant and you cannot understand why. Nothing happened. At least nothing visible. But reputation rarely changes all at once. It changes one conversation at a time. One implication, one raised eyebrow, one carefully timed comment, and often the person doing it still acts completely normal around you. That is what confuses people. How can someone smile at me and still damage my image? Because influence and hostility do not always look emotional. Sometimes they look strategic. There is a difficult truth about human nature. Some people do not want to defeat you. They want to remain more trusted than you. And if they cannot rise, they quietly lower perception. Watch for certain patterns. Pay attention to people who frequently explain your behavior to others. People who always interpret your intentions. People who speak for you. People who tell stories where they appear balanced and you appear uncertain. Notice people who constantly soften criticism with polite language. Because hidden opposition rarely says, "They are wrong." It says, "I'm just worried." And concern is one of the safest disguises influence can wear. Another sign appears in groups. You tell a story. Before people react, someone reframes it. You express excitement. Someone immediately adds caution. You share a win. Someone redirects attention. Over time, your image becomes filtered through another person's perspective. And many people never notice this happening. They think reputation is built through major events. Most reputations are built through tiny repeated impressions. Now be careful. Not everyone who disagrees with you is secretly against you. Good people give criticism. Good people challenge you. But there is a difference. Healthy criticism improves clarity. Hidden influence creates uncertainty. One says, "You should think about this." The other makes people think there's something off about them without ever saying why. The deeper reason people do this is uncomfortable. Your reputation controls opportunity. People decide who to trust, who to invite, who to support, who to recommend, who to listen to, long before facts appear. So someone who cannot control your actions may try controlling your image. That requires less effort and often produces more damage. But there is one mistake you must never make after realizing this. Do not become paranoid. Do not start assuming everyone is plotting against you. That mindset destroys judgment. Instead, become observant. Watch who speaks about your intentions. Watch who changes stories. Watch who becomes active only when others are watching. Watch who acts supportive privately but ambiguous publicly, because people reveal their loyalty by what they protect when you are absent. Anyone can respect you in front of you. Pay attention to who protects your name when you are not in the room. That is where hidden intentions become visible, and that is where power begins. 5. They plant doubt when you start believing in yourself. There is a moment in almost every person's life that quietly changes everything. It is not the moment they become successful. It is not the moment they become talented. It is the moment they begin believing they are capable of becoming more, because belief changes behavior. The moment people believe they can improve, they move differently. They take risks. They speak differently. They stop asking for permission. They stop accepting old limits. And strangely, this is often the exact moment hidden resistance appears. One of the darkest signs someone may secretly be against you is that they do not attack your goals. They attack your certainty. This is important to understand. Open opposition is easy to recognize. Someone says, "That will never work." You know where they stand. But subtle opposition is smarter. It does not tell you to stop. It simply makes you question whether moving forward is wise. It sounds softer, more intelligent, more reasonable. You say, "I think I want to start something bigger." They say, "Just don't get disappointed." You say, "I'm finally becoming more confident." They reply, "Confidence is good, but stay humble." You say, "I think I can do more." They respond, "Don't expect too much." Nothing sounds negative. Nothing sounds hostile. And that is why most people never notice. Because doubt rarely enters your mind through fear. It enters disguised as wisdom. That is what makes this sign so dangerous. It feels responsible, measured, protective, until one day you realize something strange. Every time you felt momentum, someone reduced it. Every time you felt courage, someone cooled it. Every time you felt possibility, someone introduced hesitation, and slowly your excitement became caution. Your confidence became overthinking. Your movement became waiting. This is how invisible opposition works. Not by destroying action, but by exhausting belief. Think about this carefully. Most people do not fail because they lacked ability. Many fail because they lost emotional permission to continue. And once belief weakens, action follows. There is something uncomfortable about human nature. People are often comfortable with your struggle. They become uncomfortable with your transformation, because transformation changes relationships. If you become more disciplined, others must explain why they remained comfortable. If you become more successful, others compare. If you become more confident, old dynamics disappear. So instead of openly resisting, some people unconsciously become guardians of your old limits. Not because they hate you, sometimes because your growth changes their identity. This is why hidden doubt often appears right before breakthroughs. Notice the timing? You never hear, "Be realistic," when you are doing nothing. You hear it when you start moving. You never hear, "Slow down," when you are lost. You hear it when direction appears. That timing matters, because many people do not resist failure. They resist change. Watch for repeated patterns. Do they become supportive only after you lower your expectations? Do they become relaxed when you stop trying? Do conversations feel easier after you give up on something important? Do they encourage stability only when ambition appears? There is another version of this behavior that is even harder to detect. They compare your beginning to someone else's peak. You say, "I want to create something." They remind you of people already ahead. You say, "I want to improve." They talk about how difficult success is. You say, "I'm finally seeing progress." They point to how far you still have to go. Again, they are not stopping you. They are shrinking your emotional momentum. Because a person who doubts themselves does not need to be controlled. They become their own limitation. And this is where hidden opposition becomes powerful. The person no longer needs to discourage you. You begin doing it for them. You delay decisions. You question opportunities. You wait for certainty. You become afraid of appearing unrealistic until eventually the voice that once came from outside becomes your own. That is the real danger, not criticism, internalized hesitation. But there is something equally important to remember. Confidence is not refusing all advice. Confidence is knowing the difference between guidance and limitation. Good people ask questions that sharpen you. Hidden opposition asks questions that weaken you. One leaves you clearer. The other leaves you smaller. Pay attention to how people affect your energy after conversations. Do you feel expanded or reduced? Do you feel focused or uncertain? Do you feel challenged or quietly discouraged? Because people leave emotional fingerprints, and over time, those fingerprints become beliefs. Never forget this. People who want the best for you may challenge your plans, but they do not challenge your right to grow. People secretly against you often do the opposite. They never say, stay small. They simply make becoming bigger feel irresponsible. And if you are not careful, you begin protecting limits that were never yours to begin with. 6, they encourage decisions that keep you small. There is a form of opposition that almost never feels negative in the beginning. In fact, it often feels supportive, reasonable, protective, safe, and that is exactly why so many people miss it. One of the darkest signs someone may secretly be against you is not that they discourage your dreams. It is that they encourage choices that slowly reduce your future. Not obvious bad choices, not dramatic mistakes, small decisions, comfortable decisions, decisions that seem harmless in the moment, but expensive over time. This type of person understands something most people never realize. Your life is rarely changed by one giant decision. It is shaped by hundreds of small permissions. What you tolerate, what you delay, what you stop believing, what you settle for. And hidden opposition does not need to destroy your ambition. It only needs to make you comfortable enough to abandon it yourself. This is why the language sounds familiar. You don't need to work that hard. You're already doing enough. Why take the risk? Just enjoy life. Maybe this goal is too much. Be realistic. Again, nothing sounds hostile. Nothing sounds cruel. And if you challenge it, you look unreasonable. Because who argues against comfort? Who argues against stability? Who argues against safety? But this is where human nature becomes dangerous. Not every invitation to comfort comes from care. Sometimes comfort is offered because growth creates distance. Think carefully. People often say they want others to succeed, but what they really mean is they want others to succeed without changing, without becoming harder to relate to, without becoming more disciplined, without becoming more confident, without leaving old habits behind. Because growth quietly rearranges relationships. If one person changes, everyone around them must adapt, and adaptation is uncomfortable. So instead of saying, don't outgrow me, people say, slow down. Instead of saying, your ambition makes me uncomfortable, they say, don't stress yourself. Instead of saying, I prefer the old version of you, they say, you've changed. Notice how subtle this becomes. The goal is rarely to stop your progress. The goal is to reduce your momentum little by little until your future becomes smaller without feeling forced. This is why you must pay attention to timing. When do they offer comfort? Do they encourage rest after effort? Or do they encourage rest the moment momentum appears? Do they support balance or quietly reward avoidance? Do they become happiest when you lower standards? Because timing reveals intention. There is a major difference between someone protecting your well-being and someone protecting your limitations. One says, rest so you can continue. The other says, stop so you don't change. At first, the difference feels invisible. Years later, it becomes your life. Think about how this works in practice. You begin learning a difficult skill. Someone tells you not to take it so seriously. You become disciplined. Someone reminds you to relax. You start becoming confident. Someone warns you not to become obsessed. You become focused. Someone suggests you are losing yourself. Eventually, something strange happens. You stop because it feels responsible, not because you truly wanted to. And this is the trap. The decision becomes yours, which means you never notice influence happened. There is another pattern hidden inside this. People who encourage small decisions often speak only about immediate emotions, how difficult something feels, how uncomfortable growth is, how tiring discipline becomes, but they rarely talk about long-term consequences, because comfort always wins short-term arguments. Growth usually wins long-term ones. This is why hidden opposition loves immediate relief. Immediate relief kills difficult futures, and difficult futures are where transformation happens. Now be careful. Not everyone encouraging caution is against you. Wise people protect you from unnecessary damage. Wise people ask difficult questions. Wise people challenge reckless decisions. But there is a difference. Healthy caution expands your future. Hidden limitation shrinks it. One asks, how can you do this intelligently? The other quietly asks, do you really need to do this at all? Listen carefully to repeated messages. Some people constantly direct attention towards safety, toward convenience, toward staying familiar, toward staying where everyone understands you. And over time, those messages become identity. You stop introducing yourself as someone becoming more. You begin introducing yourself as someone who almost tried. That is how small decisions become permanent lives. There is another uncomfortable truth. People who keep others small rarely think of themselves as enemies. Many genuinely believe they are helping, because people often project their own fears as advice. Someone afraid of failure teaches caution. Someone afraid of judgment teaches invisibility. Someone who gave up teaches acceptance. Someone who settled teaches realism. That does not make them evil, but it does make them dangerous to follow, because people offer others the world they have accepted for themselves. So when someone repeatedly encourages decisions that reduce your possibilities, ask yourself something difficult. Are they protecting me or protecting the version of me that never leaves them behind? Do not answer emotionally. Watch patterns. Observe outcomes. Look at your energy after conversations. Do you feel more alive, more capable, more committed? Or do you feel relieved but smaller? Because that feeling matters. Growth often feels uncomfortable. Shrinking often feels peaceful at first, until years pass. And one day you realize something painful. Nobody stopped you. Nobody blocked you. Nobody attacked you. You simply accepted enough small decisions that your future became unrecognizable. Never forget this. People who want the best for you may challenge your methods, but they do not repeatedly encourage you to abandon your potential. People secretly against you rarely say, stay where you are. They simply make staying feel intelligent, and that is one of the most powerful forms of limitation there is. 7, they never attack directly. They wait for you to defeat yourself. There is a final pattern hidden beneath all the others. And once you see it, you begin understanding human behavior differently. Because truly hidden opposition rarely looks like opposition. It rarely announces itself. It rarely creates dramatic moments. It rarely stands in front of you and says, I don't want you to succeed. That version is easy to identify, easy to avoid. The more difficult version is quieter, more patient, more intelligent, because some people understand something powerful. If they attack directly, you defend yourself. If they pressure you, you resist. If they openly oppose you, you become more determined. But if they influence your thoughts, if they shape your emotions, if they weaken your confidence, you begin doing their work for them, and that changes everything. One of the darkest signs someone may secretly be against you is this: they do not try to defeat you. They wait for you to defeat yourself. Think about everything we talked about before this moment: cold reactions to success, disappearing when support matters, remembering weakness, shaping perception, planting doubt, encouraging smaller choices. None of these actions destroy you directly. That is the point. Each one simply increases friction, and friction changes behavior. Not immediately, slowly, almost invisibly, until one day you begin making different decisions. You hesitate more, you trust yourself less, you delay opportunities, opportunities, you become smaller than your natural direction. And because nobody forced you, you believe the decision was completely yours. That is why this pattern becomes so difficult to recognize. Human beings prefer obvious enemies. Obvious enemies make life simple, but hidden resistance often operates through influence rather than conflict. Not because it is stronger, because influence creates less resistance. Imagine a person trying to move a massive stone. Pushing directly takes enormous effort, but changing the angle slightly, that changes the entire path. That is how subtle discouragement works. Tiny changes, repeated enough times, until years later, your destination becomes completely different. You tell yourself, maybe I'm not ready, maybe later, maybe I should lower expectations, maybe I should stay where I am. And slowly, possibility turns into caution. Then caution turns into identity. Then identity becomes reality. This is why you must understand something difficult. People rarely lose their future in one dramatic moment. They lose it in quiet negotiations. Small compromises, repeated hesitation, tiny acts of self-abandonment. And once enough of those collect, they no longer need outside resistance. Their own mind becomes the gatekeeper. That is the endpoint hidden opposition hopes for. Not your failure, your surrender, because failure can create growth. Surrender creates stillness. Think carefully. Who benefits if you stop believing in yourself? Who becomes more comfortable if you never fully change? Who loses nothing if you remain uncertain? These questions are uncomfortable, but they reveal patterns. Again, this does not mean becoming suspicious of everyone. That becomes another trap. Not every disagreement is sabotage. Not every criticism hides bad intentions. Not every cautious voice is trying to hold you back. Some people truly care. Some people protect you. Some people see risks you cannot see, but hidden opposition leaves a different emotional result. Healthy guidance leaves you stronger. Hidden limitation leaves you smaller. Healthy honesty gives clarity. Hidden resistance creates confusion. Healthy challenge increases action. Hidden influence increases hesitation. That difference matters. Pay attention to how people leave your mind after conversations. Do you feel clearer, or do you feel reduced? Do you feel challenged or quietly weakened? Do you feel more capable or more dependent on approval? Because influence always leaves traces. And if you ignore those traces, eventually they become habits. There is another truth most people discover too late. Sometimes nobody is actively trying to stop you anymore, but their old voices remain. A teacher who underestimated you, a friend who questioned you, someone who laughed too early, someone who kept reminding you of limitations. They disappear, but their words stay. And eventually, you become both the prisoner and the guard. You reject opportunities before trying. You lower standards before pressure appears. You abandon ideas before testing them. Not because anyone stopped you, because your mind learned to stop itself. That is why awareness matters. The moment you notice the pattern, its power begins weakening. You begin asking better questions. Is this fear actually mine? Is this limit real? Did I decide this, or did I slowly inherit it? That question changes people, because once you begin separating your voice from the voices around you, you become difficult to control. You stop treating comfort as truth. You stop treating hesitation as wisdom. You stop treating old identities as permanent. And suddenly, the same forces that once reduced you lose influence, because they only work when unseen. Remember this carefully. Most people expect enemies to stand in front of them, but many limitations stand inside them. Not because they were born there, because they were repeated there. And the final form of hidden opposition is not making you fail. It is convincing you to choose less than you are capable of. That is why power begins with observation. Observe reactions. Observe patterns. Observe what happens to your thinking after certain conversations. And above all, protect one thing: your ability to decide who you become. Because once that remains yours, very little can truly control your future. And that is the strange truth. The most effective attack is often the one that never looks looks like an attack at all. If there is one thing to remember, it is this: the people who change your life are not always the loudest, and the people who limit your life are not always the cruelest. Sometimes they are simply the voices that make you doubt yourself, one small thought at a time. Do not become suspicious. Do not fear people. Just learn to observe. Watch reactions. Watch patterns. Watch who becomes uncomfortable when you grow. Because power is not controlling others. Power is recognizing what influences you before it becomes your identity. And once you stop letting hidden voices decide your limits, you become difficult to control. Maybe while watching this, someone came to mind. Maybe not. But from this moment forward, pay less attention to what people say and more attention to what your life becomes after being around them. Because the greatest victory is not defeating hidden opposition. It is refusing to become smaller because of it. And that changes everything.